Risk, as we mentioned at the beginning of the day, seems to be the tension point around lived experience, and why potentially we haven't, people, leaders with lived experience especially, why we haven't got the foothold in the criminal justice system that we're seeing in other sectors such as mental health, health in general. NHS are kind of thought leaders in this. So why is the criminal justice system so far behind? It's only been really the last few years that we've seen great strides in people like myself being able to go back into prisons, for example, having keys to a prison. But a lot of people aren't that lucky, because of their convictions, despite, being rehabilitated and helping people on the outside, they're not given the opportunity to go back into prisons because of the security element and the security checks that happen, and that dark cloud that kind of follows us all around. And I think that was the triggering element for this next part of the discussion around risk management. And so the segment title is Pros and Cons, because we're all professionals, but we're also people with convictions. Risk management through a lived experience lens. For me, this has been a really topical, challenging thought process over the past few weeks, and I'll maybe this will set the scene a little bit. We've recently started a contract where we work closely with a few statutory agencies. One of the people who worked for the statutory agency was really concerned about the way that New Leaf potentially manages risk. So this person was particularly concerned because we don't ask for a risk assessment on any of the people we support. We have an open door kind of drop-in in our offices, which are all secure and cameraed and things. They're very safe. But they were very concerned that we weren't getting a risk assessment, and we weren't finding out for sure what these people had done, what their conviction was for. And we were like, we were just kind of there. We've been doing this for 6 years. We're not some cowboy outfit. We do things properly. We've passed due diligence many, many times. But ultimately, my view on risk was very, very different to this person's view on risk. And my reasoning behind that was because I've had to navigate that risk. When I was in prison, I navigated it successfully through the support of my friends and, through just being quite streetwise and street savvy. And since then, I've navigated it both as a volunteer, running my own service, meeting and working with lots and lots of different people with lots and lots of different offences, including some offences against women, multiple murder convictions for some people, and so on and so forth. So we had this clash, myself and this person, because I was like, we don't look, we're not a fear-based organisation. We don't approach each person with a view of what are they going to do to us or what might they do to us. We approach each person and each relationship from an asset-based approach. So how is this person presenting to me today? Have they turned up on time? Are they polite? Are they open to suggestion? Are they open to challenge? We just go by how the person presents themselves. I believe it's called person-centred working arrangements and stuff. So we're very person-centred as opposed to, bureaucratic processes. And we'll touch upon desistance theory. A few people have already mentioned it. I think it was Gareth and a few others. Desistance theory is kind of the theoretical underpinnings of criminology, and it speaks of what helps people to stop committing crimes. Is it turning up at probation once a week and ticking a box and, seeing your risk come down and then eventually going off and getting a job? Or is it more about... Sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. Yeah, so is it about I've just completely lost my train of thought. Let's go to the next question, sorry. Risk management through, so risk assessments, let's go to that. Can you ever, so this is my question to you, the panel. So some of the lived experience guys, we've got Adam, we've got Samia, we've got Tev, we've got Zach, we've got Graham, we've got a few other guys, Otis as well, I can see. Can you put your cameras on, please, all of the network members? So this is a question to you. Can risk ever truly be managed? Let's go to Adam.
Personally, I don't believe it can be ever managed truly by an outside agency. An outside agency can have a bit of influence over somebody, but Can anybody in this conference now tell me the name of any statutory body which actually truly gets to know its service users? Because without actually building a true relationship and true rapport, then how the hell do you know who you're dealing with?
And that's what desistance theory tells us, isn't it? It's saying to us that it's not about the bureaucratic processes, it's about person-centeredness and genuineness and building relationships and co-production. It's about all of those kind of relational things rather than a risk assessment being done to you. Tev, what about you? What are your thoughts on sort of risk assessments and their accuracy, or is there a place for them? You're on mute.
I know. Thank you, Marie Claire. My experience with the risk system is a little bit different to some of our network members. I was convicted of a low risk crime. It was a fraudulent related offence. So I don't have as much exposure to the issues around risk that some of my peers have. However, during my time in custody, I did help quite a lot of people with their experiences with their OMUs, offender management units, and it was amazing to me to see what kind of factors are taken into account when assessing risk. So, for example, for me personally, I was convicted of a fraudulent offence, but I was placed in a BCAT jail because of the length of my sentence. Didn't quite sit well with me, but that's the rules and the laws, and that's what it is. I'm still on licence at the moment. I have monthly phone calls with my probation officer, who's changed about 6 or 7 times over the last 3 years. But I think it's important to understand risk and who is the risk to, or who are you protecting from? Is it members of the public? Is it protecting risk? Is it ourselves? Is it our family? And I think it's important. I mean, there must be some kind of checklist and algorithms which are used. I just don't completely agree that the ones that are being used are the most appropriate ones. We all have issues in terms of risk to reputation and the organisations that we represent. I mean, as a result of my crime, I was plastered all over the tabloids. I was quite fortunate at the time because I was put away and I never had exposure to that. But it was only once that I had started having access to the internet that I really started to see the horrible words and the glamorization that happens in the media, and really began to understand the impact that had on my family. So for me, it's a difficult one. But I'd like to invite any of my other colleagues who are here to kind of talk a bit more about their own experiences in terms of risk and probation, because my one was really, it was a checklist that took about 15 minutes on my first release. And I hadn't really had much contact with issues in relation to risk personally from there onwards.
Well, I think in my own experience, so I sort of alluded to the fact I've had quite a long history of sort of relating to institutions that sort of manage things like risk and care issues and all that sorts of stuff. It's quite hard to find like publicly available. They're quite obscure. They are available, but like to find like publicly available sort of literature explaining, for example, what Oasis is, the offender assessment system. Okay, so this is a massive process. I think you just alluded to it there, Tev. This sort of process at some point during your custody, or at some point during your interaction with the criminal justice system, a probation worker will sit you down and you basically have to explain how you've got to be where you are. And as you go through, they tick off all sorts of random stuff. So you get hold of this literature that explains this, and it's thick. It's thick of language that like you'd need a dictionary next to you to understand what you're reading. But that's what you do. You get to understand it, and you realise exactly how incredulous some of the points that they're using to judge whether you're risky or not. Right? Okay. So the things that like quantitatively increase your risk in an Oasis assessment. If you're black, you are more risky. Like the guidelines of marking your risk of harm to the public would mean you're more risky if you're black, and that's just a default thing. So they're split vaguely into two groups.
Like algorithms.
Well, yeah, basically just a matrix, a way of scoring someone, saying you are this risky, you are most likely to go on and do something else. Yeah. And that's the thing that they're worried about. That's the thing, risk management and stuff, that sort of language comes from. And so you have these static risk factors, stuff like where you were born, like did your dad go to jail, are you a male, like all those sorts of things make you more likely to commit an offence in the future. Okay, and then there's other ones that you do have some impact on, like, do you mean, like, you know, your ability to reason and things like that. So they assess them, but this cumulative score means that you would either be decided to be too risky to be released, too risky to be given a supervision order instead of custody, too risky to be on certain courses over others, or not on certain courses when others will, you know, and all of these numbers are used to decide these things that physically stop someone being able to get out of prison. Which is a ridiculous way to manage risk, isn't it? Because, like, there are so many things that would make those risks positive, or they make them worth having a go at, or, like, you know, that tiny little percentage for the greater sort of capacity of a person being able to sort of being believed and being sort of trusted, like, do you mean? But that's not how numbers work. So your question about can risk be managed? Yeah, I think it can. Otherwise, why are we all here? But, like, the way it's being done at the moment is an insane way to go about it. You completely devoid people of their agency to change, and it can only be managed if the person is on board with what they're trying to manage.
And there's, for me as well, there's this contradiction around risk management in the community, especially, or anywhere actually, in prison, out in the community, around risk. So I'm an offender. I'm a person with convictions who's going through something at the moment. I may have had a bereavement. I may have had a separation. Whatever's happened, my risk has gone up because I'm feeling a bit chaotic and discombobulated. So I go to my offender manager and I tell them about that. I speak to my probation officer because that's what they're there for. Straight away, my risk goes up. So it's counterproductive and counterintuitive for me to be open, to be honest. And honesty should be a mitigating factor of risk, surely. If you're being honest about a situation, for me, that brings your risk way down. The fact that you're open, you're communicative, you know, you clearly got your head screwed on and you're reaching out for help. That's the kind of behaviour that we should be nurturing and kind of, you know, expecting from people. But what we're doing instead is cultivating and fostering a culture of, I'm not going to say when I need help. I'm not going to be open and honest because it's going to go against me. And it's just this kind of crazy, nonsensical tension that's constantly existing together. For me as well, the thing that this statutory manager said to me that really offended me, actually. So we're having this discussion about how my view of risk is different to their view of risk, and that I understand everyone's got the best intentions. They're trying to protect us. We're trying to protect everybody. But she said to me, I think you're being a bit naive. And I just was like, what? You know, I find that really offensive that you would put me and the word naive in the same sentence together after, and I sort of went, not in a shutting her down kind of way, Gareth, because I take on board what you said earlier about, you know, stifling the conversation. But then on the other hand of that, it's like, actually, let me tell you a little bit about kind of the things that I've been, the things that I've experienced, then you might see that I'm actually not naive, that I'm just a little bit maybe desensitized to risk, or maybe I'm not even thinking about the word risk. I'm thinking about the word potential. I'm thinking about the word hope. I'm thinking about the word support as opposed to risk management. So I think as well, we're doing the same things, but we're doing it in a different way. Has anybody else got any thoughts?
Yeah. MC, can I come in?
Yeah.
So, because I think like the risk factors and that, I would have been probably deemed as a mapper tree in my lifestyle of criminality. I'm trying to get it. I think the lived experience element of it manages a risk because you're dealing with an individual on an interpersonal level, then actually looking at that number or looking at even though we're aware of the risk information and the system, I'm trying to get it in the sense of how they portray to others or due to the public or safeguarding around children or sexual offences and stuff, etc. But it's how do you engage with that individual on a personal level? And I think that breaks the barrier, and you can manage the risk individually with that person by utilizing the experience in the criminal justice system. I'm trying to get at. But from a service perspective, the risk has to be managed in some way, because the reality of it is we're working with individuals that may have a load of other complex issues going on. So it's important that we work collectively together, but not put them individuals into this category of, you know what, you're too risky to work with. I'm trying to get at.
No, I was just going to say, I had a conversation with a mentor of mine, I suppose, somebody who's a lot older and wiser and more clued up about this like risk assessment thing, because it really got my back up and actually just got me thinking and really sort of dissecting this topic of risk. And I was like, I just don't want to do a risk assessment on a person. It feels like it goes against everything we stand for. To judge somebody, it's basically going back to that assumptions game, isn't it? For me at the beginning, it's judging somebody on things that you know nothing about. It's completely against the grain, and I really don't want to do that. But then there's the other side of me that obviously wants to protect my staff, protects other service users and so on and so forth. But so it's that, what do I do? How do we go about this? And the suggestion made to me was, what about asking the person? So the service user comes out of the prison, for example, we don't know anything about them. How about just asking them, is there anything that you want to tell us that will help keep you safe and help keep us safe? You know, just having an adult conversation, treating people like they're not just going to lie to you. And that was another thing that this statutory manager said. She was like, yeah, but they could come out of the prison and tell you anything. They could be like, you believe them. And I'm like, why wouldn't I believe them?
So Marie Claire, looking at from a criminal justice background, like, we look at risk. So the topic is that looking at the risk of the lived experience lens in it. So
yeah,
when I was into criminality, I would look at risk like that. I'm trying to get at in the sense of pre-planning. What's the way I'm going to get away? Am I going to get collared? I'm trying to get at. So I'm managing risk to keep myself safe so I don't get nicked. I'm trying to. So when you're dealing with individuals that are from the criminal justice background, from my own experience, when you engage with them on a human level and that, you're mitigating the risk. I'm trying to get at. You're trying to get at because you're getting to know them. But at the same time, there's a flip side to that as well. For an individual to have that kind of conversation with you, so especially coming, because the way my mind still works, that kind of criminal justice way of looking at things, I'm trying to get at, in the sense of, if I was going to be approached by somebody that I haven't met before, it's less likely that I'm going to be indulging in a conversation about risk for them, or do I perceive the public to be a risk, or am I perceived a risk to staff? I'm trying to get at, because I hadn't even contemplated that. I'm trying to get at. So it's an important factor, again, is the trust element, isn't it? So you're building trust and rapport with the individual, and the information that you're going to get throughout the process. So I'll give you an example. I seen an individual in prison, and even though I was doing assessment on him, but I brought the street mentality to it. By me bringing that street mentality to it, I got so much information out of that individual without him even realizing he's giving me that information. But I've covered the risk. I'm trying to get it in the sense, but I've connected with him on a human level. But I've still got everything covered that I need to. So I don't need to use the terminology, are you a risk to others? Now I can get that information in a different way.
So for you, so you're still doing the same work, and you're still doing, you're still assessing things, and you're still conscious of that element, but it's not the focus of the conversation, and you're not being open about that language either, are you? Like, going back to the language thing that Gareth was talking about, that, for the first thing to come out of your mouth to be about risk to somebody that you want to support, for me, the two don't go together. Has anybody else in the network got any thoughts on this? Jerry? Graham, any of you? Tev?
I was going to add to that.
Zach?
Let's take away the word risk for a minute and use the word trust. I've been employing people since before it was fashionable to employ people with criminal records. And I'd often say to people, tell me any reason why I should trust you. Because that doesn't matter whether you've got a criminal record or not. It doesn't matter. Put it aside. That's someone else's game. You risk assess ladders. You risk assess plugs. You do not risk assess people, because people are not inanimate objects. They have skills, they make decisions, they're fluid, they respond to an environment around them. You can't. A risk assessment tells you nothing about the person. One of the issues here is all about how you build trust, whether it's with a criminal justice system or whether it's with an employer. And I am an employer. I employ people up and down England, Scotland and Wales, and I have done for a long time. And one of the things I will say to you is it's about a judgment call on the day about what a person says and what they've been doing with their lives. Take a step back for a minute. This idea that you go from someone in prison straight to working in criminal justice is ridiculous. It is, and
so it should be. So it should be. Let's be honest.
Absolutely ridiculous. I don't know everyone here, but I've probably got a longer criminal record than most of there, at least. a long one. But yeah, I've worked at Manchester City, Manchester United, Liverpool Football Club. I've worked for the Job Centre. I've been civil servant. I've worked in the criminal justice system. I've worked right across there. But one of the things, the big key that changed things for me was the willingness to step back and take a cleaning job. And I always say to myself, if someone doesn't do that, if someone wouldn't do that, why would I trust them with anything else? And it's just a person's ability to step back and invest in themselves and stop blaming the system. Because if you blame the system for the present, you'll blame it for your future. And it's that ability to take responsibility for yourself, invest in yourself. And all of the Oasis scores are based on two things. Have you got a job, and are you investing in yourself? Are you educating yourself? Because there's a likelihood, if you're investing in yourself, there's a likelihood you're looking towards the future. You want to do something with your future. If you're not, why would you expect me to invest in you if you're unable or unwilling to invest in yourself? And that's taking into account from people coming across any type of background, whether they have a criminal justice, criminal record, or they've taken drugs in the past, or they've had mental health problems, or they've been long-term unemployed. People come with baggage to every single job I've worked in. They bring baggage. They have to answer questions. And I think what we should do is stop. You don't have to use this language. Use your natural language and ask yourself a question. Do I trust me? Is there any reason anyone else should trust me? And what are those reasons? And that's your armor. If you don't have some, go and find reasons to trust yourself. That's your armor. That's really my perspective on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. No, that was one of the last things that I think came out of the study, especially in interviews with people like yourself, Zach, who took part, and thanks very much for that, was this idea around, I suppose, around risk as part of that innovation, innovative services. We heard earlier in the opening marks, the qualitative stuff. Do you remember Steve saying about, I blame the system for the reason I was in it for so long, and James, I blame the system for being there for 20 years, but then they wanted me to be a part of that system, which was going to, lose myself. And that's genuinely how I feel. If we know that something isn't working, why would the system want to assimilate us into that? And furthermore, for me, why would you commission me knowing that I'm a leader with lived experience? I do things differently. You're commissioning me because I do things so differently and because that's successful for our community. But then on the other hand, you want me to do things just the same as you. And for me, it's that delicate tension between, let me just do my innovative service the way that I want to do it. You do yours the way that you need to do it as a statutory agency that's concerned with, purely concerned with risk. And don't expect me to do what you're doing, because that's the whole point in us all being here together, is that, we're all doing things differently. Hopefully together we can ensure that not one person falls through the net of a criminal justice system that is struggling and basically not doing what it should be doing, rehabilitating people and seeing them progress. I think that was a really interesting session.